Culture.
And now on Radio Culture, GH #1 Reggae Dancehall online radio. Are you ready to hear this? Yeah, this is Fred Dread, King T, word, sound, and power. Constantly in tune with Radio Culture Ghana. Click on the link and link.
Hit Web Radio. Radio. Culture.
Rasta high.
I just say high, who high.
Driving or you like
Young side I style. The sheep heard the shepherd calling. I lead you to the path of righteousness. The Rastafari thy shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to rest up in green pastures. He lead us bear into the bird of righteousness by his name's sake. Though you walk through the valley of shadow of death, thou shalt not fear. High and high. The sheep heard the shepherd calling. The Rastafari bring back his own.
Rasta high.
I just say high, who high.
Driving or you like
Young side I style.
1212 Radio Culture on the sabbatical man, and give thanks and praises itinually. Yes, indeed, the time is nigh. The time is actually now. The much awaited panel discussion on the commemoration of the 131st Earthstrong of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie the First Kedemawe. To many it's a mystery, and to many it's a straightforward part. Because I know say, yes, the king was crowned, but before he was crowned, he was born. So all or most Rastaman and Empress know the significance of tomorrow. It's actually tomorrow, July 23rd. But for the many that do not know, we are going to give them an insight on the importance of commemorating the Earthstrong of the King Emperor Haile Selassie the First. Kedemawe, Kedemawe. And my panel today, as advertised already, we will be hearing from 7 Fireside. Fire bridging that. 7 Fireside.
Righteousness.
7 is a musical artist and a lot more other things. We'll just keep it at he's a Rasta man. We will also be hearing from Wero I Rastafari Empire. Yes, the Empire himself, Dr. Kwejo Oponwadie, aka Wero I. We will also be hearing from him. And of course, we'll also be hearing from the Empresses. It's not a man thing, it's King and Queen. So we have Empress Sadia. Empress Sadia, who is not a stranger to this platform at all. And hopefully we can also get Empress Naj to join her to bring the Empress factor to the discussion. Empress Naj did tell me that they have a meeting of the Rastafari Women's Council, but she's going to try and step aside to make time for this discussion. So we will wait for her. And then we will also be hearing from the man called Daddy Bosco, the chairman of the Rastafari Council Ghana. We will be hearing from him as well. Hopefully, because right now he has not joined the discussion yet. Oh, what a joy to hear the utterance of a Rasta man and a Rasta woman. That is the joy I'm feeling right here in the studio of Radio Culture. It's all blazing right now.
99 in the Shepherd's Tent.
King Selassie Rastafari was born July 23rd. So tomorrow we'll be commemorating the day. But ahead of that, we're having this discussion. And so I welcome my panel right now. Blessed love, Empress and Empires. Oh, Kings, Rases. 7 Fireside, Wero Rastafari, Empress Sadia. Blessed love. Hello. Blessed love, Empress Sadia.
Blessed love, much mercy.
All right. Blessed love, 7 Fireside. No, you don't know that. Yes, indeed. And blessed love, Wero. Yes. We give thanks. We give thanks for such a wonderful day as this. And actually, like I indicated earlier, the actual commemoration is tomorrow, but we are having the discussion today ahead of that. And let me say this: this is not going to be one of those. It's not an interview. I'm not going to be asking questions. It's a reasoning. It's groundation. So if any of the item want to, bring in any reasoning at all along the line, please feel free to do so, because I am only a learner here. And we know that we are all coming together to commemorate such a beautiful and such a wonderful occasion. So, with that said,
yes, can I say one thing real quick?
Absolutely, you can. Absolutely.
Yes, can you please, tell us what you think too, because sometimes when you're at your end, you'll be asking us questions, right? So as much as you can, Bridget, make sure just say anything you want to say too, like you said,
All right. By all means.
Seriously,
By all means, we'll do that. So that's what I said. If you want my input on anything as we go along, feel free. Like I said,
yes.
I'm only tweaking the knobs over here, but all the way I do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. All right. Yes, in the background, sons of the Rastafari elders, Rastafari. Jah is I share pedal. And so let us get it going right now. Let us start with the Empress, and then we will all come together and make it a reason. Empress Sadia, blessed Lord, one more time. July 23rd, what does the day symbolize for you as a Rasta woman?
July 23rd, as a Rasta woman, is for me the day that the savior of African race was born. The savior of African race, in the sense he was not born, he was crowned King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and the conqueror of all oppression by a bar.
Mm-hmm.
The African race has been oppressed. The African race has been down oppressed for many, 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 many years. Our children, our sons and daughters were captured from the motherland. They were not slaves. They were kings and queens. They were warriors. They were doctors. They were philosophers. They were all kinds of noble, great people. And they were captured and sent to the Western Hemisphere. And we built the Western Hemisphere. We built it. That's how they brought us here, to use us as free labor. We became slaves. So in that place, Jamaica is the land, and the word Jamaica, I'm learning now, came from the Akan word Jamayaka.
I've heard many variations of that too. Yes, indeed. Before you go on, Empress Sadia, please let me quickly introduce Daddy Bosco. Daddy Bosco just joined the discussion. Blessed love, Daddy Bosco.
Yes, Rastafari, greetings.
Selassie, as you can tell, we have Empress Sadia, Seven Fireside, and Wiro I, Rastafari, on the panel as well. We're waiting for Empress Nat. But Empress Sadia was saying something before we just, paused to introduce you. So please stay with us. Empress, please go on.
Greetings, Daddy Bosco, just to acknowledge. So, our children that went to Jamaica, they were in that land, and they spoke the Akan language, saying, "Oh, we're probably not going back." So, in the Akan word of Jamayaka means maybe we are going to stay here. So anyway, I am saying, in that land, a son of Africa rose up in the person of Marcus Garvey. And he rallied a lot of our people in captivity and told them, look to Africa, for a Messiah will be born. A Messiah will be crowned. So what is a Messiah? A Messiah is simply a savior of our people. So the 23rd of July, to me, is the day that Emperor Haile Selassie, he was crowned, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah. It is not something to apologize for. It's a fact. It is a historical fact where 72 nations, including all the Western kings and rulers, came and bowed to this emperor.
Yes,
to
indeed.
Acknowledge there is no other ruler on this earth that came with those titles of King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah. So that is what 23rd July symbolized for me, is the day that Emperor Haile Selassie was proclaimed to the world, which is something in the Bible that I think later on we would draw from and elaborate on our point. So with these few words, that's what it means.
Yes, indeed. We give thanks for that. 7 Fireside.
Yes, sir.
Coming.
Okay, what
Same thing, same way. Yes. What did they means for you?
For real, me, the thing I think of mainly the His Majesty, what he stands for, right? In terms of like he come to shift the axis, of how things be. But I don't want to say but, I'll just say and really it's up to I and I to tap into that. You know what I mean? So first I think of Haile as the King of Kings, Selassie, as more of cutting edge kind of person. You know what I'm trying to say? Most ironic. So whatever word they want to use, revolutionary, whatever, because first we can start with the impact straight of what he do, right?
Yep.
And you think about there's a lot of things that Father channeled to us, the people, that has transformed the world over the past, few decades, since he tried the earth. We've seen some of the fruits now, like, legalization of ganja in many parts of the world. In Africa, they're trying to, right? Yeah, and at least that's the direction, whether we like it or not. That's the direction things are going now. A while back, if you say legalize marijuana, people say something like, "Oh, that would be that day, man. You guys are just talking, man. You just, But now it's like people living with it. Not just that, just talking about things in terms of I liberty. Locks is a common thing. Though people interpret different ways.
Yes.
The concept is like, oh yeah, this is the thing. Cutting edge. A while back, I remember we had brethren where their parents would threaten them so they would kill them because the locks and all that. People actually got killed. People actually got, but now it's a thing. The way people eat, that too, you see more people talking about plant-based diet, though they defeat add all sorts of things there. The idea is there, So, and then of course the impact of reggae, So what's interesting is that His Majesty talked about the things that we're facing, he was facing, the world at that time was facing, right? And if you look at what we're going through right now, it hasn't really changed much, right? We're still dealing with the black and white world thing. His Majesty said, man, that's an international problem that got to be fixed. How we're dealing with that, so we can discuss that. He talked about nuclear warfare a lot. His Majesty was on that issue seriously,
Yes.
What does it mean for us right now? Because it's still a thing in there. Seriously, North Korea, Russia, what's happening around. There's a lot of things that we got to just not say it's our business to worry to deal with that, to find ways out of that.
Absolutely.
That's Africa too, because
absolutely,
Africa is always the target, right?
Yes.
And then the global economy too is to look around the continent, talk about progress, economics, and all that. But it's the same thing, our people suffer. You know? And then on another level too, you know, like it's Mike was trying to get us to think about categories, like what he said. This thing about education is westernized. He said the education we have is westernized, you know, including Ethiopia and this time. That's how it's based on Western culture discourse. So how do we make it turn it again, cutting edge, let's see, revolutionary, right? How do we turn into what we want and or what we need based on the way we face the world, the way we live, you know, and the idea of, you know, defining categories and abandoning categories that don't apply. You know, like if you hear about in interviews like with the white person, you know, or Rana Falashi, then we're going to say, when the interviewer come up with categories don't apply, and they respond to that, they correct you that this thing doesn't apply here, right? Unfortunately, many of us have become experts at the category. So when they ask us questions that don't apply, we're still trying to stuff our thing in it, you know. So that's one thing I see Father lead the way in everything. Father go through
all spheres, all categories, all layers.
You know, so yeah.
All right.
You know, just try to tap into. So that's where I would love to start.
Nice. And as we go along, we'll get deeper into all the things you mentioned.
What's to be done, you know.
All right.
Give thanks, brother.
Every time. Emperor Wiro. Yes, indeed. Same thing, same angle. What does Rastafari or His Majesty and his let me say his appearance on this earth, what does that signify for you?
Well, give thanks. Important question here, but this is it. When we look around the world today, I think that we can see the significance of July 23rd, 1892, when His Imperial Majesty was born in Ethiopia. And why do I say this? I say this because even look at us here. We've all arisen out of the significance of this day.
Rastafari. That's the point right there.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yes.
Right. So when His Imperial Majesty was born, we put it into context and look at what was going on in the world at that time. You know, most of Africa was under colonization. Most of the Caribbean was under colonization. In fact, they used to say that the sun never sets on the British Empire because most of the world was under either British or French or German or some other kind of colonization.
Yeah.
Now, His Majesty assumed the title as a Ras, as a young man. Notice also that from Ras, he was crowned Negus.
Yeah.
And at every stage, there is the expansion for I, the children of Africa, in terms of the consciousness that every significant event leads us into. So what do I mean by that? So first, he's crowned as a Ras, and then as Negus, king, and then as emperor, right? So this is the three coronations, right?
Yep.
So when we talk about the triple crown, it's not simply a physical crown that is on his head with three different chambers. No. It's the three different coronations that His Imperial Majesty has been crowned. Now,
interesting.
When we come into the context of the colonial world, we see, say, a lot of us, because of the British brainwash education we received, if it hadn't been for this day, we don't know who we would be right now. I'm just saying this. So,
yes.
That's you said the thing. You know, so this day is very significant, and within this context of the colonial, arose in Jamaica, and also other places. Sometimes we don't talk about those other places because Jamaica is so predominant, right? But the idea of Rastafari is not necessarily limited to Jamaica alone.
No, not by any stretch.
Start from there. Right. So within this context, Leonard Howard arise. And Leonard Howard say, look, people, we don't hail no queen of England.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own king.
Yes.
Let us hail our own king. And, Leonard Howard actually sold pictures of His Imperial Majesty for which he was, jailed. And you use that to raise money and actually buy a ticket and go to Ethiopia and was present at the coronation of His Imperial Majesty as Emperor of Ethiopia.
Interesting.
And returned to Jamaica to continue the work. Let me also say that Leonard Howard was also in Ghana. In fact, his book, The Promise Key, right, was published in Accra, Ghana.
Wow.
So when we talk about Rastafari today, we only have to look around the world. Like, look at the African world today. Rastafari continues to play a very important role in our consciousness as an African people. Who are we, right? The Rastafari helped us to answer that question. So the significance of this day, when we want to put it in a nutshell, we can look at it on all angles. It's pointing us in the right direction spiritually, pointing us in the right direction politically, pointing us in the right direction economically, pointing us in the right direction socially, pointing us in the right direction, as some of you alluded to earlier on, even in terms of health-wise and, liberty and everything. So this day is important, it's significant. It's significant not only to those of us who are called by the name Rastafari, but it's significant for all Black people in the world, and also even the Babylonians. Because, yes, right? Because, His Majesty, he did say in Geneva, he said, the torch that you have lit in Africa will burn Europe.
Yes.
So it is significant for us. It's significant for all in existence, and it's significant also for those who plan our continued oppression, to know that anytime they light the torch, they have to think about the consequences, because it will come back to haunt them. So just as an entry point, I will pause here and give thanks for the
Nice. We give thanks for that. And then I want to make a quick point about the Triple Crown, right? Because I'm absolutely learning, that angle about the progression in the coronation and all that. But help me clear this out. Because if you look at the actual crown that was placed on His Majesty's head, it also looks like 3 crowns in one. What do you say about that?
Yeah, true. I mean, of course, the crown, the what we call the physical crown, the thing that goes on his head, is also symbolic
of that progression.
That he holds.
Nice.
So in fact, I can even say that when we talk about crown, it's more of the office than the physical object. Okay. You understand?
Yep.
So the coronation represents his stature at that particular point in time. Of course, the physical crown is placed on his head to signify the office
as a symbol of the actual office. All right. Absolutely. Give thanks for that. Yep. Yes, indeed. Daddy Bosco, what does 23rd July signify? Daddy B.
Give thanks. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, so give thanks for this opportunity to read about Rastafari. And before I go for it, let me just say that Devin Liley, it's been a while since I last spoke with him.
Yes, true.
Platform with him. I think for the past few, we've been interacting. So, his daddy had been when she was in Ghana last time. We had the opportunity to do it like a family fight.
Yes, that's true.
the significance of July 23rd.
Daddy B, you sound a bit muffled.
Yeah.
You sound a bit muffled. I don't know if you are a bit far from your mouthpiece or you are in a hollow chamber or something. Could you please?
All right, the better. Is it a bit better?
Yeah, it's a little better, yes.
Okay. So as Rasta people growing up back in the 80s and things, I remember something Lil Joe used to say. He said for him, what you call it, 23rd July is the most significant day on the Rastafari calendar, even beyond 2nd of April, because if there had been no birth, there would be no coronation.
Fuck.
You know, so this day is a day of great essence to Rastafari. It's the day that I and I have the opportunity to tell the world about what we believe in, what we defend, and what we stand for. So I say happy celebrations to ones and ones globally. Let us continue to use this day to showcase the essence of Rastafari to our people. Rastafari will lead the way. It is the torch that can liberate the African nation. And I'm not mincing words. I'm not just saying it to say it. But let me just touch on two quick things. First is healthy living. I remember as a youth growing up in the 70s, fighting Rastafari and hearing the good news of healthy eating vegan and things like that. Today, it's a fact.
Yes.
Today, it's like if you're not a vegan or you're vegetarian, then you're missing something. Decades ago, when Rastafari said it, I remember in Labadi, they used to tease us that because we couldn't afford to buy no, that's why somebody like me now, although I'm not a vegetarian, sometimes when I see people, I laugh. I say, oh, when we were practicing vegetarianism, you were laughing.
Yep.
But now, you're taking over the bandwagon.
It's a whole industry now. The plant-based thing, it's a whole industry.
Thank you. And like I'm saying, number two, the cannabis issue.
Yes.
When Rastafari was advocating for cannabis, we were treated as outcasts.
Yes.
As people who didn't have their thinking capacities right. Today, Aban Bagbe sits in parliament and he says that cannabis is one of the things that will take Ghana out of our current situation. So like I said, Rastafari will provide a torch to lead the way. And it's high time that I and I, as Rastafari, present our message in such a way that the good people of Africa will overstand. Final thing I say before I step off is it's rather ironic that today Caucasians and other nationalities are embracing Rastafari while Africans are still pursuing that Eurocentric, what you call it, view of religion and spirituality.
Yes.
You know, and that's when I think we need to do a lot of work because people say Rastafari is black liberation. However, black people seem to be discarding it and the other nationalities are embracing it.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes. Give thanks. Give thanks for that. Before anything else, like I said, it's a discussion, you know, so I'm not going to be asking specific questions. If any of the item want to throw in anything, let's do that before we move to the next phase.
Well, can I say something?
Oh, I think Seven wanted to say something first, real quick, Emperor, before you come in. All right, Seven.
No, I was just saying, you tell us how you feel about what today means.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I wanted to say.
All right, I'll do that. So to me, as a Rasta man, I think it, for me, it's an embodiment of everything that all of you have said, but I'll take it a little more personally. Because for me, I think that, like I said earlier, and like Daddy Bosco reiterated, without a birth, there would not have been a coronation, right? Before the emperor was crowned, he had to be born. He had to manifest, you know, in flesh, physically on this earth before all the other prophecies, all the other, things that had to happen. So for me, it represents a point in the world's history where history, or not history, a point in the world's history where everything had to be reset, because again, and like I said, I'm going to take a bit of what all of you have said. Like Wiro said, the world was under a certain order, right? And that order was what was running the world. That day when the emperor was born signifies the day when that order had to start falling down on its face. Black people had been in enslavement, in colonization, in all these things for all these years. That day is the day when all that started the process of reversing. So that definitely is what 23rd July stands for me. And also, in Ghana, I remember when we were in Ghana, 23rd July was like our, Christmas, so to speak. It gave Rases it's very important, because it's what a joy to when two and one and man and woman and things like that come together, in oneness. So it marks the day when I could wear my red, gold, and green and go and be with my brethren and my sister and play music and eat some Ital food and do all the nice things. So even on that level, personally, that's what it represented for me as well. Yeah, okay, all right. I was going to ask if I've answered the question, but yeah. All right.
On the other side of the interview, right?
Yes. Always. Sometimes it feels like you have to be on the other side too. Yes. All right. But you wanted to say something else, Wiro, or that was, like you said, that was it?
No, that was it.
That was it. Okay. All right. So now let's look at the throne, the link, the Solomonic link. Now, in this day and age, with a lot of material, with a lot of research, with a lot of people reading all kinds of things, some good, some we're not too sure of, there's a lot of, I'll call it attack, for want of a better word. I'll just call it what it is, attack on the symbolism or on the faith Rastafari, right? People want to say that, Rastafari actually took its origination or its foundation from other sources and all of that. Now, I know that we connect Rastafari with the Solomonic dynasty. I want us to reason about that and clear the heads of some people who are still confused about what Rastafari really is, because people want to say something like, okay, Rases get the idea of Rastafari from, say, the Bible, but there are books that predate the Bible, for instance. So I would like us to look at that. Where do we start? Who want to go first? Emperor, you want to start?
Okay, since you called me out, but yeah, give thanks for the question. I think that when we look at His Majesty as King of Kings, I want to say that there are different ways in which we can look at that, and one of them is certainly the Solomonic dynasty, but also the authority of His Majesty as King of Kings is even way before the Solomonic dynasty, right? And what do I mean by that? His Majesty himself, when he traces his lineage, he says that he traces it back to King Ori, which is more than 6,000 years ago, right? So what does that mean? That brings us into the context of the African worldview, where we talk about divine kingship, right? And this divine kingship is an idea that we can see all around us in Africa. We can look at it from, ancient Egypt. We can see it in Sudan. We can see it in Ghana. We can see it in Ethiopia. We can see it everywhere. So even without the Solomonic dynasty, we can still, what word do I use? We can still claim,
yes,
the divine kingship of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. So Well, that's what I mean, that we can look at it from different angles. Before Solomonic dynasty and even within Solomonic dynasty. Now, when it comes to the Solomonic dynasty, we know the whole story of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon and stuff like that. But back to my point, the divine kingship existed in Ethiopia before the Queen of Sheba went to Jerusalem to meet King Solomon. In fact, the Queen of Sheba, based on this idea of divine kingship, was known throughout the world as a ruler of the Ethiopian people. And back then, when we talk about Ethiopia, we're also looking at beyond the Red Sea into the area that is now known as Yemen. Mm-hmm. All that was part of Ethiopia, or stretching all the way from Yemen to Kush. That's why even in the Islam, they have Bilqis. When they say Bilqis, they're referring to the Queen of Sheba because she was prominent in the eastern part of Ethiopia, which is Yemen today. If you look at the people of Yemen today, you see people who are, the physical characteristics are exactly like who we see in the western part, which is Ethiopia. It's because that was also part of Ethiopia before it was Islamized. So, you know, when it comes to His Majesty as King of Kings, yes, we can look at it also from the divine kingship aspect, because this has been existing from way, way back, even before the Queen of Sheba.
Then give thanks. Deep insight. I hope those who go on Facebook and all those places to cause confusion among themselves, because it's definitely, we are not confused. We know exactly what we're talking about. But those who've been doing that, I hope they are listening and taking the cue, because we are trying to, do exactly that, clear that confusion that they've been dealing with. Empress Sadia, you want to chime in at this point?
Okay. I will continue from another angle where Raswiro left off.
Yes.
And I take the spiritual aspect of the Solomonic dynasty from the way I understand it.
Yep.
Now, when we started as Rastafari in Ghana with our dreadlocks, so on and so forth, they used to make mockery of us. They thought we were crazy, we were ignorant, and we were uneducated. We were just fools walking on the streets. But I just want to throw light, beginning from myself. I come from an intellectual family, because I want to give some background so people understand.
Mm-hmm.
It is on record, if I'm not mistaken, one of my uncles, Dr. Iliasu, a professor of history, he went to Cambridge University. Then he taught at Oxford University. He's maybe, if not the first, but maybe if one of the first three doctors, Nordness, who attained got a degree in a doctor, right? The title, or whatever you want to say that. Dr. Elias. And then my father was a lawyer. So I am educated. I came from that family. Then at the age of 16, 17, I started exploring Rastafari. And Raswiro here was the instrument and the channel that came from. When I met Raswiro back in the day, and I was 17, and I had this long weave from my head to my feet. Then I met Raswiro and Radgameli at Domi, the snake flat. We had a great reasoning. And these two brethren sat down and educated me about my African identity and why I should be proud as an African and not have foreign hair to change the way I look. So then the next day they saw me, the weave was gone, and I have my natural hair. So
Selassie.
I'm one of the first sisters in Ghana to start wearing my natural hair, before the other Rasta sisters. I'm just talking especially the educated ones. So I'm giving a genesis to make a point. They think that we don't know what we're talking about, is what I'm saying. So we read a lot of books. Raswiro Rasdameli gave me a lot of books that I read. Then I started growing dreadlocks. Then I went to Dr. Liman's house because he's a family member. And I was having lunch with Dr. Liman and his family. And Mrs. Liman wanted to understand what I was doing with all this dreadlocks business. So we started an argument or debate or discussion, and all was based on the Bible. Then I mentioned I'm a Rasta woman because I'm following Emperor Haile Selassie because he's the King of Kings. You know, I was just trying to show who.
Yeah. So
she called. To her that was the biggest blasphemy. Shouted. She called her husband. She said, "Daddy, listen to her." And on the record, may his soul rest in paradise. Dr. Hila Liman said, "But he is the King of Kings."
There you go. There you go.
Argument vanished. There was silence on the table. We ate lunch in peace. We never had that discussion again. As a young girl growing up, you know, in my intellect, understanding African spirituality, His Imperial Majesty Rastafari, the Bible, I'm just saying, these are not coming from riffraff. These are coming from also intellectuals. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
To validate me.
Yes.
Saying, if I see Emperor Haile Selassie, Jesus Christ in his kingly character, and he said, but he's the King of Kings, that was accepting that.
What is hidden from the wise and prudent shall be revealed to the babe and suckling, you know? There's a lot of things that we knew way back that people are only beginning to scratch the surface of right now. That's the mystic of Rastafari. No joke about that. All right. 7. You wanna come in here?
Oh, I love the way to go, man. I just want to listen, you know? No, for real, man. Monday.
Okay, all right. Daddy B.
Monday benefit from it, yeah.
True. Daddy B. Daddy Bosco.
Yeah.
All right. So we're exploring the Solomonic link, right? And I have established that Rastafari is not just, it didn't start with the Bible. There's other more ancient mysteries that declare and that legitimize Rastafari. That's what we're exploring right now. You want to chime in on that?
Okay, just thanks. What it is, you see, three people have a proverb. They say, and it shows that spirituality is innate. If I am to talk about even the whole concept of Rastafari, it is steeped in African culture.
Yes.
Because traditionally in Africa, it is the holy people who wear dreadlocks. So among the Ga tribe, Gadangbe that I belong to, it is our Wulomai.
Yes.
And things who wear dreadlocks and keep their precepts. So for I and I now to relate to Rastafari through the Bible, what I tell people is, for me, see, I started reading the Bible as a teenager, and what struck me most is the African traditions represented in the Bible.
Yes.
So I'll talk about 2 or 3. First, circumcision. Like I said, for we Gadang, when you are born male, by the 8th day you should have been circumcised. Number 2, pouring of libations.
Absolutely.
When you read Genesis, you realize that in Jacob's moments of spiritual elevation, he will pour a drink offering, libation.
Yes.
So when we heard the story of Solomon and current dynasty of His Imperial Majesty, it was like things coming full circle. Let me say this quickly. And sometime in, I think around 2007, 8, 9, thereabout, Stephen Seagal was in Ghana, and our free PR for the campaign, she was brought by Princess Asio Kante.
Yeah.
And so, of course, Stephen Seagal in Ghana, we have to go and see that activity. When we were ushered into the presence of that Santini, and the way he behaved and was talking, it reminded me of the day I met His Imperial Majesty Sarah Jacob, that's the grandson of His Majesty.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, hey, is it that these royal people, they are all trained in how to behave? Sarah Jacob is a very soft-spoken gentleman, same like that Santini. Like when we were with him in the district, he wasn't yelling and shouting with power and talking with power. He was speaking with authority.
Yep.
Very soft-spoken, but you could
feel the authority in there.
The authority. And so, like I said,
Daddy B. Oh.
Like some of you have said, the issue Rastafari and the essence of the spirituality of man in flesh is timeless, and you cannot just say it started with Solomon and Sheba. Predate them.
Yes.
Give thanks.
We give thanks for that. And before 7 and Wiro asked me to chime in out. I'm not going to wait for you to do that. I'm going to chime in myself.
Let me tell you something.
Yes.
I remember about 6 years ago when I was doing my book, Conversations on the Creative Arts in Ghana.
Yeah.
And because it was conversation, my thinking was, reflect what the people are saying. And I sent the material to David. And he read it and he told me, I'm just hearing people's words. So what are you also saying on TV? So when I heard them, I said, hey, my man did there, he do it,
Yes. I have a lot of reasoning with David, with 7 Fireside. We actually talk almost on a weekly basis, sometimes multiple times a week. And that's one thing I've noticed about him as well. He's not one to just talk and leave it. He wants to always know what you also think. That's something that, I'm happy you mentioned that, because that's something you definitely can say for, that's a fact. And it's refreshing to know that, it's not somebody who always wants to just talk. He's always trying to learn as well. That's great. But yeah, let me chime in on that part. So I think that, as they say in certain circles, they say we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, indeed, Emperor Haile Selassie's lineage and the whole mystery is revealed very vividly through the Bible. But do you also realize that our history, our culture, is not documented the way the Bible is? So there's things that predate the Bible, which are fact, but it's not documented, whereby we can go and say, okay, go and check this verse or that verse or the next one, right? And then the Bible coming in at that point, to me, only manifests what we have already known the whole time. Like Bosco said about practices like, libation and all of these things. It's very true that, the Bible mentions the Solomonic link and all of that, but that by no means ends it there. I believe that whatever ancient book that you can find, as ancient as you can find it, you will still see the mystery of Rastafari in there. And it's our culture. It's the way we manifest ourselves. I don't think that certain things we waited till the Bible told us to do before we did it. Rather, I think that even the Bible just tells our history as a people. Remember, when we talk about the beginning of, according to the Bible, the beginning of creation, the first country, the first nation, the first land, whatever that you find mentioned, is Ethiopia. Until this day, there's a land called Ethiopia. The River Gihon is still there, called the River Gihon. So, if according to that Bible, the origins of humanity started from Ethiopia, there is no way that anybody can leave that and go and start anything else from anywhere else and say that we are copying after that, right? I think that's what I think. I think that Rastafari manifests in whatever angle you look at it. And this is also true from the fact that I and I as Rasta people come from different backgrounds. Some of us come from Muslim backgrounds. Some of us come from Christian backgrounds. Some of us come from traditional African backgrounds. And we all still can connect with the mystery of Rastafari. So it's very erroneous to think that Rastafari starts with the Bible. No, Rastafari is only manifested and endorsed and legitimized by the Bible. That's what I think. Anyhow, let's move to the next phase. So yes, please. Yes. True. Go through.
So totally, yeah. The first, let me start with a little story first. You know, the first time when I met Big Dread, I was like maybe 14 years or something. One of the first things he said was, Big Dread, so rest in perfect peace. So I'm the walking Bible, you know. So he said he's the walking Bible, right? What does that mean, right? I mean, it can mean many things, but one of the things it can mean also is that instead of the book, right, that you read, the life that we live
should be the Bible, yes.
Right. Now, why am I bringing this as a precursor to what I want to say? So, a lot of Europeans, you know, back in the day, made a whole big issue out of saying that Africans have not documented our stuff. I take issue with that. We have documented everything, but what we need to also ask ourselves is, what is documentation?
Yes.
Thank you, Rastaman.
Yes.
You know, and what do I mean by that? When you look at our cultures, we document through narratives, we document through song, we document through dance, we document through dramatization.
Absolutely, hieroglyphics, all that.
Oral history, hieroglyphics, etc., etc. So we just have to look at text, not as something that is necessarily what has been written with pen and paper, but what has been transmitted from generation to generation that we also are beneficiaries of today.
Absolutely.
Right? You look at, for instance, in Ghana, right? You look at the Dagara people, they have what is known as the white bar and then the black bar. Now, this is their historical account, their social organization, everything that you can think about is within this. You look at our brothers and sisters, everything is documented through their dramatization of events that occurred long time ago.
Like the Hubechocho.
Documented. Absolutely. That is documentation as well. So we don't want to subscribe to the whole notion that, you know,
that if it's not written down in ink.
They set everything for us. You know, we operate in some ways differently from you know, the Europeans, but that doesn't mean that we don't do it too.
Thanks.
Can I comment?
Absolutely, fire.
Yeah. We were cool.
Yeah, man. Yes, I.
You make you finish your point. I'll go write them down. Make you finish your point.
No, go ahead.
No, because the thing is so very, very important. Some of them are very important things, you know, when you're talking about actually some point you were saying something, say instead of the book, right? But then you balance it out with something like, oh yeah, you know, and the book. But the point is that, like when you were talking about Big Dread, right? And you say it's instead. That's how you started. You say instead, and I was feeling that instead, because the living is the text. Right. Sure. So what we're doing right now is text. We're documenting. It's going into the archive somewhere, whatever we want to call it. You know, even it's been documented literally, like you know, Joe Beloved is recording it, but actually, like we're doing something that is a statement. You know, that's why the point you make, Wiro makes to it, another point you're making that's very crucial is where we look at everything through the scriptural or textual, print, media, document, video, this, that. You know, all the mass media that the West has pushed out, we tend to almost take it for granted that it is just a neutral thing and, you know, it's our thing and that's what we're supposed to be looking at as the model for how to do these things. But like the Virgin just said, you know, all these other things be text, dance, you know, and all that. But the documentation is different, right?
Yep.
And it's okay to be different. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? I think we've gone through phases where initially they told us, you know, Africans, you don't have a history, you don't have a culture, you're different, you're the other. So that's why we're oppressing you. So we found a lot of the first generation scholars, they spent a lot of time talking about, hey, we're great people, we're wonderful, this is our history, this is that. Great. We need that, right? But we're answering that question basically. Of course, it was helping us too because it also taught us that we were nothing. So we needed something to tell us that we're something, right? But that was the first phase, right? So the emphasis there is on what? We are the same, right? Then there's the next generation that I think came like before, maybe I want to put in 3 different generations, you know, but it's definitely longer, but just broad groups, right? So the first generation, like colonial, those people who lived a lot of part of colonial period and lived after Kwame Nkrumah. Oh, I mean, like, you know, that generation, right? Like worked into the independence, you know? And then those were like they be the youth or something, the next generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
They or when they were younger when these guys were like elders in the scholarship or whatever. They talk more in terms of, okay, so we're not I mean, I'm trying to generalize, but this one main voice I'm hearing, right? We're not, and other people have I'm sure Vero will tell us some things too, you know. It was like, okay, we are not different, but here are equivalents, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
These are the equivalents. So if you have blue shoes, yeah, we have our blue shoes too, but it's African, it's made out of this. You know, everything's like, we're answering to your categories, you know. But now, you know, like just what we said, there's always been this other stream that I think needs emphasis, you know, where it's like, we don't answer your questions. Because maybe it's okay to be different too. It's not like we're using it as an end point, you know, but really, the fingers on the hand, they'll not be the same. Right? And it's okay to say this one long song. The point was say they go work together. Yep. You know.
Yep.
But the thing is, because you know, I was just checking about, you know, you both people that talk to Africans are so uniform. And one of them come say, McLuhan, he said, no, I feel like the Africans closely, they're not restricted at all if compared to the Europeans. Well, he said, we appreciate the individual. To be who they be, seriously, just like the overriding things that you live for people is because of people that you are, right? But the whole thing is that you're individual. Look at how we did name people. Each particular name, like a collection of names they will give you. Like, you know, give you 2 or 3 names, right? Or some 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, right? Anyone, a brethren or sister go carry many names because it's a particular thing that individual to stand for. You see what I mean? That thing is encouraged traditionally, you know. The Europeanization is trying to homogenize the thing. And so when we look at the Western discourse thing, we think it's universal. Because saying that, you're trying idea, you know, this is how we get information, you know. Yeah, but the professor over there is telling you right there that, look, man, that's only scriptural, that's only textual, that's only print media, recent development, political tool too. It's made to like represent Western discourse, and we have to combat it to get our point through. It's not neutral, you know. So not give thanks that you bring that.
Fantastic reasoning.
Yeah, not just print media, all its offshoots, you know.
Fantastic reasoning.
You know, radio, TV, you know, all that. Like Haile Gerima, he said one thing. He said when he's making a movie, he's not just in combat with the content, like struggling to convey the message in terms of content. He finds himself in combat with the film medium itself because it is white supremacy.
Yes.
Embodied in that. Someone would say, well, it's just a gadget. But the logic of it, I mean, you know how I mean, we can get to that. I don't know if I'm digressing, but the point, I want to come back to the point about discourse. What is it? Is this the discourse we want to deal with or not? And this is a tricky question that we don't ask ourselves. We just say knowledge is knowledge.
Yeah.
So we might be looking at Africa through their eyes. We might be looking at ourselves through their eyes.
Yes.
And a lot that has happened.
True that.
True. Sadia wants to say something.
Yeah.
Sadia, go through.
Give thanks. So, the spiritual aspects of Rastafari, also keeping in and coming back to the point Raswiro made. We can find, so this is, we are Africans and we are defining ourselves through our own eyes, right? Because we were sitting in our homes and somebody came from somewhere to say, to define us and to tell the world who we are. So now, as Rastafari, we are only correcting history. So like Raswiro said, if they say we don't document things, I know Raswiro is a historian. He studied history at University of Ghana. So I like to chip those things in. So people listening who don't know who people are would know, what we're talking about. So he knows what he's talking about. And to support that, I know that when I was, I used to go to my mother's hometown. That is Sandema. And beyond Sandema, there's a village called Wiaga. My mom used to take me there from when I was 4 years old. And I was really intrigued because they were cut off from civilization totally, right? Those days, no electricity, no water, everything was indigenous African. And you will marvel what I learned. And their culture is very similar, everything to the Bible. So, yes, everything. So if you take the story of Abraham, whose wife Sarah couldn't have babies, and she decided to give the maid to Sarah to become his wife or to have a child through. It's the same thing they do in my mother's hometown till today. Every woman will have a maid that helps her in the home. And then when the maid has grown and attained maturity, that woman herself, not anybody, that woman will give her maid to the man to marry him. So they will become two women married to the man. Then that maid will also bring a maid, and the woman will bring another maid, and then all eventually will be married to the same man. But look inside the Bible, like I said, Sarah, and then when you look at Jacob and Leah, Leah, Rebecca, so these similarities in the cultures. When I was reading the Bible, I was seeing those things.
Interesting.
And when we say that history is not necessarily written, but it's well documented, this is another example. I was in the United States, and I was pregnant with my child, and then I decided I want to go to my mother's hometown and have my baby there. And as crazy as people thought that was, to me, it was everything, for me to have that experience, because I saw women having childbirth in the natural order, whereby in the United States, they were doing their cesarean
C-sections and all that.
I didn't want to be part of. So I wanted to go and have a baby in my mother's people's, in their hands, to use, as we were talking about natural remedies of doing things, natural remedies of eating. Anyway, so when I had my baby, I told them to name her for me. So this is how history is documented. So for them to name her, they had to go and consult the oracles. And when they consulted the oracles, they came with a name, and they said the name came from my great grandfather, who was a great warrior, and his name is the Hawk. His skills in warfare is he fights like the hawk. So they named my daughter Awopsale, the Hawk's lady. Okay, so this is how history is documented.
Interesting.
I wouldn't have known that I had a great uncle, a great grandfather who was fighting.
Yes.
Who was a warrior. Would I have known that? Was it written in any book for me to know?
Interesting.
So now that my child has that name, from time to time she'll come and ask me, Mom, what's the name mean? Where did you get the name from? Basically, I'm saying what Raswiro said.
And then you pass it down. That's very, very interesting. Very interesting. And now let me also give a short story to buttress that point again. I was traveling from Kumasi to Accra. I was on a bus traveling from Kumasi to Accra. You know how these preachers come on the bus and start preaching and quoting every single verse in the Bible and all of that. And this guy was, waxing lyrical, quoting everything, saying all of that. And there was this guy in the back who seemed to be a bit agitated, and he kind of kept his cool for a very long time. Up to some point, he just couldn't hold it anymore. So he just stood up and said, Wafa, ubejina hey. Sorry, I will say in a John chapter say, in a Matthew chapter say. Now one can so chapter we didn't know him for. He said, ubejina say, what's it John chapter there? Matthew chapter say, John chapter say. One can so I would not way. O chapter way no wa him for che one can so chapter. Serious question.
We have been telling you, right? Tracy, what is supposed to be the chapter in
this discussion? My chapter in this discussion is that Haile Selassie the First Emperor Haile is Kings of Kings and Lord of Lords. Yes, that's my chapter. And then if you go into the chapter, then you read the individual paragraphs and everything, which is what we are doing right now. So but yes, it just goes to say that we didn't have to write our chapters and verses to be a legitimate people. We don't have chapter this, verse that, but we do have, like Wiro said, the cultural practices like the song, our history, our traditions. Everything is couched in song. It's couched in dramatic display. It's couched in our traditions, how we name our children, like you just mentioned, and all of that. Everything is there. We don't have to see it written down before we know it is what it is. Otherwise, when, what's his name, Rattray and all these people came to Ghana, they wouldn't have found anything to write down. Before they came to write anything down, we had preserved it in many other forms before they came and then put it in their format, right? But that's their format. We always had our ways. All right.
Can I say something right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, I think I want to touch on something somebody mentioned, I believe it's 7, about how things are presented to us, and the whole idea is that they are universal, right?
Yeah.
And, really nothing is universal, right? Everything is culture specific. Everything is culture. So Europeans have their own thing, we Africans have our own thing. And as 7 Fireside said, it is okay to be different.
Yep.
It is okay to be different. It doesn't have to be conforming to anything that they have done. I'm going to give you an example. So I remember one time, a long time ago, when I was a student, and in class, the professor said something to the effect of the universality of science. So I told him that, no, science as we know it today is not universal.
Yes.
It is culture specific. So, after an explanation, he agreed totally that yes, because look, we have our science as Africans.
Yes.
In fact, if you look at our body of knowledge regarding herbs, plants,
yes,
the universe,
yes,
the human anatomy. I mean, look, we have our own corpus, right? And we explain it through our own worldview, through our own understanding, and that is also legitimate.
Yes.
Right? Yes. It does not necessarily have to come from, because look, there are certain things that the Western science cannot explain.
Absolutely.
Right? And
absolutely.
There are certain things that the African way of thinking, the African science, to borrow that word, explains perfectly for us. So are we going to abandon our way of thinking, our way of doing things, and just say somebody else's culture-specific thinking?
That's very
universal.
interesting.
It's not universal.
This is a very interesting angle. This is a very interesting angle.
There's nothing universal, and bringing it again, like they came and said the world was 6,000 years ago, and we Africans, we never agreed to that, right? Because for us, the world is older than 6,000 years. 6,000 years ago is like a little boy in African thinking. And now today they're saying that it's way more than 6,000 years. In fact, they give it 200,000 back. We also know that it's more than that. And how do we know?
They keep changing the numbers.
You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Recently they came out with some nya say they go find some body weight.
I love that word, nya.
They go find somebody who's older than the first oldest person in Africa.
Yeah, they will always try some nonsense like that.
You know what I'm saying? That's also to shift the post again.
Yes.
To show say, oh, Africans are not even the most Asian people in the world.
Yes.
But you know, that's a lie.
Yes.
Because if you look in creation, everything in creation starts from the black.
Basically.
Everything.
Right?
Basically.
You know,
Basically.
For real. Yeah, so I just want to put that.
Yes. And now
the bone lie. They keep digging bones.
bone lies, yes. Yes. And you know, also to piggyback off what you just said, you know, about this, our science not being universal and everything. I love that angle, you know, because sometimes you hear certain things, certain cultural practices, you know, even spiritual systems like voodoo and all of that. And you see that people want to rubbish that, you know, people want to be like, oh, nah, you know, whatever, and this and that and the next thing. But I think they only do so because they are trying to use Western parameters to justify these things, right?
Yes, Empire.
Mhm.
Look at chipping.
Yes.
Even the Western parameters of today, even though they did us great harm with all this nonsense talk about we have no history, we have no science. Now that they come around, look, do you know how many medicines we today for America here where it's all African herbs that they take do? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So they're now coming around and saying, you know what I'm saying?
Nana,
Yeah.
let me give you one example, one simple example that we can all relate to, I believe. We all remember a certain man called Nana Drobo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, back in the day when the HIV/AIDS thing, you know, appeared on this earth, however it did appear, and we don't want to go too much into that at this point, but it surfaced, right? And then seemingly there was no cure for it, nobody could deal with it, whatnot. One man called Nana Drobo in Ghana found a cure for that thing within the shortest possible time. This guy was taken to Japan. According to the story, the history that we read, they were trying to get the cure of him. He wouldn't give it to them, and so they tried to kill him. He disappeared and reappeared back in Ghana. Nobody was able to show how he came back to Ghana. No airport, no seaport. Nobody knew how he left Japan and came back to Ghana. Through what science? We don't know that. Soon after that, unfortunately, he was killed. And they told us that he shot himself in the head with a double-barreled rifle. How does anybody shoot himself with a rifle in the head?
Yeah.
We all know that's the lie.
Right. They say he shot himself twice. And we couldn't see to look at the loopholes in the story. But then we rather attacked him, right? Saying that, oh, he was lying. And so every time the African has a claim, we would rather attack the African and justify the
Sadly. But you know,
sorry, I want to say that all this reasoning we are having is tied to the first question that you asked. What is the significance of this day?
Yes.
This day, the birth of the Imperial Majesty is the day that has given us all this insight into all these things.
Yes.
If we didn't have His Majesty, we will not even be talking like this. You know,
Yep.
We'll be,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
talking rubbish somewhere.
Yes. 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 Now, let's. Yeah. Sada, you were saying something?
No, if you want to deviate, that's fine. I was going to say something.
Oh no. Finish quickly and then we'll move on.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. All of my academic writings, as Rastafari, I always feature inside Rastafari. So if it's history, I just go to Ethiopia. I write about His Majesty, and I've kept my papers for documentation. And what I realize is that some of my professors, they are old enough for one of my history classes, the professor told us to choose a topic ourselves and research on it. So I went straight to His Majesty and the the war.
The Italo-Ethiopian War, yeah.
Yes. And I wrote a paper on it, passionate paper. My professor was so I bonded with that professor because he knew about the history and so many other ones. And then when it comes to ganja in the classroom, so I've studied science here and some alternative medicine classes. I always make sure as a Rasta woman, I am expressing myself because this is a classroom. So if it's a classroom, I have to say what knowledge I have or what information I have. And I realize when in the classroom we come to ganja, medicine, we're talking about medicine and treatments, and I mentioned ganja, the class is divided. Some on my side, some against me. And everybody will produce books. So some books are written by medical doctors in favor of the weed, the herb. So I'm just saying that in my interactions in the world, and the reason why I mention these things is that it's not that what we are saying is not true, or it's exposed. Some people know. Like when I say ganja, it's not only Rastaman has been advocating and on the forefront saying that it should be legalized, but it's not only the Rastaman. It go to every house. Somebody there they smoke ganja. Some doctors they smoke them. Some police officers they smoke them. Everybody they smoke them. But then we are on the forefront advocating. And then recently, Sam J. Kunta on CNN just brought it up. And now, advocating for legalization and it's going on. So, but we have been in the forefront. And so this
for the longest time. That's one of the things that and I'm going to get a little controversial here. Recently, controversial to those that it's controversial to, but to I and I, it's no mistake at all. But recently, there was this thing, the corona thing and all of that. And, people were being practically boxed into a corner where you have to take a shot and all of that. Now, back in the day, and I remember it's a book that Wiro gave me to read back in the University of Ghana. It lined up this thing almost to the letter, almost verbatim, about something like that going to happen. So to me, it was something that was like, wait a minute, right? And this is knowledge that we have had for all this time. But all of a sudden, I heard people also espousing the same thing around the time that the pandemic thing was going on. But we had read about it way back, way back. So yes, Rastafari is very significant. And like Emperor said, if it wasn't for Emperor Haile Selassie, we all would probably be still wallowing in all that darkness along with everybody else, Now let's look at the emperor himself and what he meant to the whole world. We know what he meant to us, but let's extend it to what he meant to the whole world. Like Emperor said, like Wiro said in the beginning, even to the Babylonians, he was significant. And I'll start it off with this. When the Second World War broke out, European nations sent a delegation to His Imperial Majesty Kedemawe Haile Selassie I to seek solutions to ending that war. Now, which black man had that amount of respect among these people to the point where they will send a whole delegation? First of all, we know they sent their delegations to his coronation, which was not a common thing at the time because they had this much respect for Africa to start with. But now they actually believe that Emperor Haile Selassie held the key to ending their war. That is the significance, one single significance of what Emperor Haile Selassie meant, even to the outer world. Can we add on to that?
There was a paper I wrote or I read, and unfortunately, I've lost it. It was a 2-page paper that was chronicling the relationship between JFK and His Imperial Majesty. So I heard that I read that His Imperial Majesty and JFK and his family had great relationship and the great respect that family had for him. Anyway, so you were talking about the relationship of His Imperial Majesty to the Western world, right?
Yes. To the world at large.
One of them is the Emperor's speech that he delivered to the League of Nations, which is now popularized by Bob Marley in the song War. Until the philosophy which hold one race inferior and another superior, that song. It was a speech taken verbatim from His Imperial Majesty when he went to the League of Nations.
Yep.
You know, and so these the United Nations. So if you want to know about the relationship with His Majesty to the Western world, especially America, just Google that and you will see. I was marveled to see how the reception that America had for His Majesty when His Majesty came to visit.
Yes.
It was like Jesus Christ. When he what do you call that one?
The triumphant entry into
Easter.
The triumphant entry is the same thing. His Majesty, the way His Majesty entered the United States, I saw the whole city blocked. People came from it was holidays. People came from their houses to take a glimpse. People were in the streets. People were on trees and buildings. Watch it. It's on YouTube. It's documented. And then I read that His Majesty was the first black man to be hosted in the White House and even to
spend the night. Yes.
To spend the night. And I've seen the dinners and the how they hosted. It's so much respect. Respect to the Majesty. You know, if you read, you will see that they had a great amount of respect for His Majesty. They gave him a lot of honorary doctorate degrees in a lot of these American universities. And I'll end there for somebody to continue.
Give thanks.
And Father had of course, King of Kings, you know. He had the same thing going on in the East, you know, like
yes.
China, he had a strong thing.
Yes, Japan, yes.
So like everywhere you go, yeah.
Yes.
His Majesty move among the people, you know.
Yes.
And even in Mexico. Yes. Yes, I read that when Italy invaded Ethiopia, the Mexican president or whether the leader then pledged solidarity with His Majesty and sent him, pledged to send him warriors or soldiers to help with his army. I'm not mistaken. You know, whatever, he pledged him assistance and gave His Majesty a dog, a chihuahua.
And also, if I may chip in,
yep.
It's very also significant is that Mexico sent one of the Olmec heads, right? And the Olmec are known to be the oldest people of the Americas, right? And they are identified as black people. So the Mexican government sent one of the Olmec heads to Ethiopia, to His Majesty, and it's still there today.
I see.
The Olmec heads are like statues that have been carved out of basalt rock, right? And if you look at it, you can check it out. Like Tadia said, Google it, and you see the Olmec heads. But having said that, I also want to say that His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I Keremawi is the first person who came out with the word collective security. This is so today we hear people talking about collective security.
Yep.
That phrase was coined by His Majesty to show that if we cannot live in a world where we think that we secure ourselves alone, we have to think about
everybody else's security as a collective whole.
Right. That word, that phrase came from His Imperial Majesty.
Interesting.
So I want to also make a point about what was said earlier on about I think Sister Sadia said that how they went to Ethiopia to go and seek His Majesty's counsel regarding how to end the Second World War.
Yeah.
I think that is also very important because they knew that the Second World War really started from what they did to Ethiopia. And His Majesty did tell them that.
Churchill actually said that. Churchill actually said this war is because this whole thing is because of Selassie, because of Ethiopia.
Wow.
Because they wanted to take Ethiopia. That's why they went back over that. So it is important to know that, yes, they came But they knew that in order for us to really end this thing has really burned Europe. In order for us to end it, we have to go to where it started.
Where the match was struck.
Right. And then also, the question has to be asked, why would many nations around the world, including the European ones, send representatives to His Majesty's coronation? You know, after all, if in their eyes, if they want to put it like he's just a little African king ruling a kingdom, whatever. And then the point has to come back is because in this world, of all the so-called royal houses, Ethiopia is the oldest
most ancient
royal house in the world. And every single royal house is very much aware of that. The British, the Norwegian, the Japanese, they all know that the Ethiopian royal house
is the original.
Is the original, going all the way to Kush. So no matter how great they think they are, they still have to come and bow to their mothers and fathers. So, you know,
it was more like association, you know, like you had to be seen to be, you know, they were more or less legitimizing themselves by associating with the oldest monarchy on earth.
Yes, indeed. And
interesting.
So, you know, His Majesty, when we talk about His Majesty is worldwide. You know, like our old Rasta people used to say, you can't go around him, right? He's so wide. But that's just a metaphorical speech of saying that in everything you look, you're going to find a dimension of His Majesty in there. So,
Kirmawe.
When we talk about League of Nations, we talk about United Nations. All these things have direct connection with what happened in Ethiopia and His Imperial Majesty
Selassie. That's a nice segue, Wiro, because I was actually going to go into the League of Nations also, right? And His Majesty's contribution to the League of Nations. And then after that, we'll come back and look at the Organization of African Unity, which today has been done all kinds of things. I don't even want to say.
Quickly before I forget.
Yes.
So I think somebody mentioned his visit to the United States. And I want to say, like, you know, when His Majesty was coming to the United States, the American government was aware that segregation was going on here. And education was also segregated. So how are you going to bring a black emperor from Africa to America whilst the black people here are still facing segregation?
Yes.
So they quickly passed what is known as the Brown versus Board of Education, which is what ended segregation of schooling in the United States.
Interesting.
It was because of His Majesty's visit to America.
Direct impact.
Yes, direct impact. So secondly, when His Majesty came, he came right here also to Chicago. There's a park here known as Washington Park. And he stood at Washington Park and addressed, because the Washington Park is in the black community. So he addressed the black people and he said, I'm quoting verbatim, he said, I am not only king of Ethiopia, I am king of all black people all over the world.
Selassie.
True king.
Yeah. So,
yes.
Wow. That is some serious education right there. I am so on fire right now. Like, you know, I don't want this to end. I do not want this to end. But we have a little time left on the thing. Actually, we asked the producers to do a double hour today instead of just the regular 1 hour. And we are approaching the end of the second hour. But there's still a little time to go. I want us to still look at His Majesty's impact on the League of Nations, right? Which now is the United Nations, and then also on the Organization of African Unity, which has become the AU, which Eduha, I will say what I have to say about it. But let's start with the League of Nations. What was His Majesty's impact? That, you know, what was his role in the formation of the League of Nations back in the day? Seven, you want to start?
His impact, League of Nations existed, and he joined it, you know, for strategic reasons, right? He had to, right? But when I think of this question, I want to maybe restate the question so I can deal with it a little Or
Yeah. Feel free.
Why don't we think of it like that body that became the United Nations, right? And I want to think of it in terms of waiting where they to talk to them. You're waiting to say to them, you know, and some of the things where they stand out be some of the things where they talk about, you know, like I love the thing we were saying about collective security. That'd be like the anchor of the thing they talk about. And at the same time, they tell them, say, and the other side be, it's up today to be,
Yes.
Like warrior talk, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, you see what you're doing to us, for us. No, it's like you do this.
Oh, we beg you, stop.
This is not to happen, you know. So, I know, like we were saying earlier on, he was talking about the black and white thing very seriously, you know. He was talking about, you know, like you say, it's an international matter, you know, like our people, so we can just discuss it and all. But it's like, this should not be happening, you know. And the nuclear warfare too, you know, like the way he talk about it, I think it will help say and I go get in there too, you know, and think about that. Talk about the global economy, you know, where he talks things like if there are things that they do, you know, the way they set the thing up, if they keep it like that, then they shouldn't tell Africans to be moderate in the way we respond to them. You see what I mean? Yep. Unfortunately, many times we're coerced to be moderate. My father wasn't moderate when it came to that. You know, like the way that my father do certain things where I know everybody knows. Say he brings us to that place where we think of other categories, other possibilities. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah, because like, you know, we're just talking about a universal thing. They trap everything in there. Father's like, nah, this is it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a move that is almost like, if you look around, it's only him to do that.
Nice.
You know, face us in this direction, you know. When they say, what can we be? You know, like, you don't just set up things and fold your arms and look at it and just feel cool with it, you know, or we don't just take advantage of what's going on. So this was on, so we just do something. But I say, tell you think of new ideas. See what if you do what we don't do before, you know. And speaking of which, linking to the thing, you know, when you talk about His Majesty presence here, like what you said, which in there, you know, like I'm sure we all see this the video of him after the UN speech where he talk about the world thing. He go meet the press, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure and you see the reasoning he talk there. He talk about the black and white thing again, you know, like it can't happen. And then the Babylon interviewers were like, and then the freedom fighters in Africa, you know, like the two said, you know, something. Well, father the train freedom fighters, right, from South Africa and all that, right? So they host them, you know, give them scholarships and all that.
Yeah.
So he told them, say, look, their thing is legitimate, you know.
Yeah.
You know, like when we start thinking about the way to speak, you know, in the world, you know, Father show us that, you know, because I think what we do a lot of times is we speak through their voice, you know, and so we say black things on their terms, and so nothing moves, nothing changes, and we wonder why, and then we get upset with each other, you know. But Father points in a certain direction, you know, like the way that they think about things, you know, they apply when we look in Father direction, at least generally.
Very, very diplomatic without being subservient, you know. He's king of diplomacy.
What Father to do in his better moments, but it'd be slushy, you know.
Every time. So I see one king who is a combination of militancy and diplomacy.
Totally.
You know.
And you know, make a quick more.
Yeah.
So I think this brings us to a very important point, right? The speeches of His Majesty.
Yeah.
And how we are as Rastafari are relating to these speeches today. And I want to highlight one particular speech, which I believe Sister Sadia mentioned earlier on, which is the speech that His Majesty gave to the United Nations in California, I believe 1968. Right, and that speech was made into a song entitled "War" by Bob Marley.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of people have used that song to say that His Majesty says, "Until the philosophy holds one race superior and another inferior." So that means that, you know, Rastafari people have to just stick to that line. But the thing is that, first of all, we as Africans, we have not gone around the world saying that we are superior to anybody. Right.
Basically.
the first thing. And the second thing was that who was His Majesty talking to?
Yes.
He was talking to those who will go around the world saying that they are superior.
Yes.
Right. And then he also said, towards the end of the speech, he said, we Africans will fight.
Yes.
If necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And we are confident in the victory of good
over evil.
So what is the good and what is the evil? Right? The evil is the white supremacy that is posturing around the world that they're superior to everybody. And His Majesty identified himself with the good, which is Africans. Right? So when we are talking about it, let's not misinterpret His Majesty word and say His Majesty was talking about saying, you know,
nice.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yes.
You know, peace and love still.
Every time.
It will be that kind of way. You know, I remember Big Dread again, who always used to say that, you know, one love is when it's among black people, but when it goes beyond black people, then it becomes true love.
Yes.
Yo, Big Dread. Yes, indeed. Every time.
We have to put the Majesty speeches in the right context for the right interpretation.
Very important. Very important.
He say one race superior. No, yes, he did say that. Did you finish reading the whole speech, or you just that line where you did just go on that line?
Yes.
Read the whole speech. Then
basically,
talk about it.
Yes.
Because we certainly have not gone around saying we are superior to anybody.
No.
In fact,
no.
You know, yeah.
All right, Sadia, chime in quickly before we move on. We are about rounding up, but there's two quick topics I want us to briefly touch before we're done. So please finish up on this one, and then we'll move on to that.
Okay, so the sovereignty of His Imperial Majesty is seen in giving us a lot of authority and power as the Black race. I read somewhere where His Majesty said, we Ethiopians identify ourselves as one and only one race only, the African, the Black race. I read that in the early years. So anyway, just to chime in to say that, like what Rasbiro was saying, when we come to Rastafari and what gives birth to the movement, like I said earlier, it is to fight injustice, the injustice against Africans. And His Majesty was very passionate about that. That's why he went to the League of Nations. And the only thing I want to chime in so we can move on was that he went there to show them that no nation, small or big, shall have any authority to invade another nation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. All right. So now the first of the two areas that I want us to touch on before we fold up is His Majesty's role in what also, because we've mentioned so many areas of our life as a human race where he impacted, but I'm also discovering one more. What is now being seen as the female empowerment, for instance, right? Women's rights, all of that. His Majesty was crowned together with Empress Menen. What does that say for the rights of the woman, for something that has now become a movement, as in women's rights and all of that? Let's look at that.
I love what Sister Sadia was saying, man, because, you know.
I think we need a whole hour for her to address that, but please.
Tell us the thing the blind side.
Go to Empress.
So for me, as an African, and I always tell people, look, I am not a feminist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Rastafari woman.
Yes.
I'm not a feminist. I don't even know what that means.
Yes.
And I always tell people, look, I grew up in Africa, and I never saw any oppression of African. I go to the villages. I go to the mountains. If you know me very well as Rasta woman, I like to search my roots, and I go to my mother's countryside. I go everywhere, and the woman is powerful and well respected.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to my countryside, my grandmother is the magadia of the house. All the men come every morning to consult her.
Mm-hmm.
But they all come and bow to my grandmother, magadia, and ask her, what shall we do? What is the order of days? They ask her. And ask the child was very observant of these things. You know?
Education.
Paternal grandmother. My father had great respect for his mother. Every time, holidays, he would send us there to go and spend time with her. He would come and bow to her, learn from her, and you know. So I know that the African woman is very, very respected. I myself, as an African girl growing up, I had a lot of respect. We didn't educate in my family. Let's educate boy and leave girl. None of that happened. All of us were educated. So anyway, I'm very passionate about this topic. I'm running out of breath.
Breathe to speak. Take your time.
So one day, this is true story. I did a TEDx show.
Talk.
I did a TED talk. And when I did a TED talk, a lady came and she told me that she represents Oprah Winfrey Network. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they were intrigued by me and they wanted to interview me for a program Oprah was doing, which was called Where Is She in the Land of He?
Mm.
So that topic meant that they were going across the world, especially in the African countries, which were dominated, according to them, by men.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to see what the role of the African woman is. And so they wanted, you know, those regular oppressive cry, oh, the woman is oppressed. So when they came to me, we did the interview never saw light anywhere because they didn't tell them what they wanted to hear.
And it's not the first time that has happened. I've heard you bonfire on many platforms like that.
Yeah, man, you know, because you're doing some serious work. So blessed, you know? Yeah.
Thank you. So when I sat down and they said, where is she? And they kept asking, I said, well, what me?
She's right here.
Is that we are all equal. I said, I went to university. There were girls in the university, there were boys in the university. We all sat there, we did equal things. Nobody oppressed me. So me, I don't know. I said, actually, at the university, and let me say this, I was coming to Commonwealth to visit Ras Bureau, to visit Ras Kwesi, and Ras Mawan. Well, where did I eat dinner every day? At Ras Mawan's dorm.
He did the cooking.
Every day, I think for me, I don't have time to cook Ras Mawan. I'm busy. So here, I have 5 cities. I have 10 cities. Come and take rice and beans from if it's whatever you find in my dorm, come and collect it. And Ras Mawan will greatly and, you know, happily come and take it and go and cook it. And then every evening I go there to eat. So where is the oppression in my culture? You know what I say?
Great point.
Because rules, the woman must cook for the man to eat. Now my brethren is cooking for me to go and eat every day. And in my family, we go out. The men, what I know is that, especially when you are a student like that, the men want to encourage you. I'll say that on the show. They come and take you. They will take you out. The brethren, my brothers in Africa, they will come and take you out. They don't want a relationship, no amorous intentions. Just because you, hey, you know, hey, let's go out. They'll buy you food. They will buy you drink. And I explained it to them in Ghana because they will spread you. They will spread you. The table will have food and drinks. You can't finish eating. I just want to say these few words to say that I didn't see any specific, you know, rules in Ghana that were set to say that woman has no place on shore.
Yep.
Of course, there are exceptions. There are men that will be their women. But even if, culturally, if you marry somebody's daughter and you go and beat her, personally, because in the actual culture, you go and marry somebody's daughter, go and marry somebody's sister. And if you beat her and you go to her father and her brothers will come to your house and beat the mess out of you, beat you a lesson. So to me, I don't see any oppression. Actually, the African woman is powerful in our society.
On point. And I want to back that up, Empress, by saying that in the Akan culture, for instance, as it is in other African cultures that I know of, Yekobisa Brewa, Yekobisa Kokra. What exactly? Yekobisa Brewa. And for those who don't understand the tree, we go to ask the old lady. So the old lady is regarded as the highest form of wisdom in our community. Now we have the Queen Mother, who is the final authority in determining who becomes the king, right? After all the men have haggled and they've considered all their individual interests and all of that shoved and pushed and everything and decided on who the king should be, they have to go and ask the queen mother, who will be the final authority to say, okay, I agree. Let he or let him become the king, right? So I totally back what you're saying. Absolutely. Now let's hear from Sabin and Wiroto, and then we'll move on to the last point.
Oh, yeah. The thing with this image, the reasonings, good reasonings, like, because the father, like Virgin said earlier, Sister said, just because the father, this is possible,
Yes.
So, the things, the reasonings is solid,
Nice.
Yeah.
Wiro.
Yes, I am. So I want to chip in something here. I think that, very important point to make. And I think where I want to start from is that, again, going back to this whole idea that whatever the Europeans determine is their problem, then we also go take it on as our problem. That is, if the white woman is having a problem with a white man, that is their problem. They can create their own feminist movement to go address that. That has nothing to do with us. Because Tanya pointed out, we are men and women, we don't have no problem as a collective society. We function as to what roles we are accorded in the society. Nobody's oppressing no woman, nobody's oppressing no man. This is not our thing, and like you also pointed out, Bisabriwa also is there for a specific reason. Why do we have matrilineal society?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That is why, we have that whole idea of Yanko Bisabriwa, because the society is organized along those matrilineal lines. That does not mean that there is no role for the man. The man also has his own roles. We complement each other.
Yes.
This is coming forward to His Majesty. When His Majesty decided to crown himself and Empress Menen, he said something. He said that he has studied the traditions of Ethiopia, and he had realized that they had strayed away from what was occurring in ancient times when the king and the queen were crowned on the same day.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Wow.
So before he came, the king was crowned, and then like 3 or 4 days later, the queen was crowned, the empress was crowned. So His Majesty said, no, we are going to go back
to the ancient ways,
archive and recreate what was there before we strayed. And so because of that, the coronation is going to be held on the same day. The emperor is going to be crowned, and the empress is also going to be crowned. So His Imperial Majesty was crowned, and Her Imperial Majesty was also crowned. So this is a reiteration of something that was intrinsic already into our own African Ethiopian culture. And for us as Rastafari today, we realize also that if you look at the early times from Leonard Howell, those days, the representation was always King Alpha and Queen Omega. If you read the Promise Key, that's what he talks about, right?
Yes.
If you look at the pictures that Rastafari put out in the early times,
yes,
from the coronation, Howell himself being at the coronation and coming back, it was always His Majesty and Her Majesty, representing the totality of our cultural worldview. So along the line, that was kind of put aside. And then, because of the patriarchal British
colonial things,
colonial mentality that have been imposed on us, everything is man. And we know where that ends if we go man all the time. But the thing is, look at the world today, right? Why is it that the continent with the largest number of female heads of state is Africa? We have to ask ourselves that.
Thank you, Rasmiro.
Look, America here, they couldn't bring themselves to the idea of voting for a woman as a president.
Yes. Yep.
But look at Africa. Right now, as we're talking, the president, Ethiopia has both the prime minister and the president. The president of Ethiopia is a woman. Right? Yes. We know that Helen
Johnson Sirleaf
was
from Liberia.
president of Liberia.
Yep.
In Malawi, they also
Yes.
had, I've forgotten her name, but she was the president of Malawi.
Tanzania. Didn't Tanzania after
And Tanzania
Magufuli?
right now also has
Yep.
a female president. We need to ask ourselves, why is it so? Why do Africans not have a problem with electing women leaders? Because it is culturally intrinsic.
Yes, because we can point to Queen Nani and Yasantua and all of those, even from historical times. It didn't even start today.
Every society. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be very careful. We have to separate our own thing from these people that are thing.
Yes.
Otherwise, when they have their problem, we go and say, "Oh,
our problem."
It's our problem." You know.
And just like science, I think the problems are not universal. They are.
They get problem with their men. They say women empowerment. No, we don't need no women empowerment. Our women are already empowered.
Already empowered. Nice one.
Yeah.
Nice one. All right. Now, we have just 5 minutes, but I'll beg the producer to, if it's possible, if we go beyond that, please bear with us, okay? Because we need to explore this last point also. Emperor Haile Selassie I was in Ghana at some point, and then Kwame Nkrumah also paid a courtesy visit to Ethiopia. What was the significance of that to I and I as Rases, especially Rases from that part of Africa?
Quickly, can I say a thing?
Yes, say a thing.
I want to say, as soon as Kwame Nkrumah became head of state, the first person you go see the King Selassie.
The last year, true.
Rastafari.
Yes.
And even in Ghana, when Ghana had independence, Ghana celebrated when His Majesty recognized the independence of Ghana. In fact, there are songs about that. That Haile Selassie congratulated Ghana upon assuming of independence. So I'm buttressing, I'm supporting what 75 side is saying, that not even just at the head of state level, but at the level of the masses, we're all looking to Ethiopia for the affirmation of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie.
From the flag to the people when they hear
everything.
Mussolini, there's document that say people in Accra were crying when they hear say Italy invade Ethiopia.
Wow.
Yes.
People ready to go fight for Ethiopia, all over Africa. And we got to watch out now.
And talking about all over Africa, we have to ask ourselves also the question: why do most African countries have red,
gold, and green? Yes.
That is a homage to Ethiopia.
Thank you.
That is a homage to Ethiopia.
A homage,
you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then, when we talk about Ghana and Ethiopia, Haile Selassie and Kwame Nkrumah, let's bring it to Ethiopia first. When Africa was fighting for independence, we had two blocks, the Casablanca and the Morovia.
Yes.
I don't remember which one. I think it was the Casablanca was the more like what we would call progressive. They wanted Africa unity now. And then the Morovia was like, no, let's wait and chill. Everybody knowing how progressive His Majesty was surprised to see His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie go and join the Morovia group. But he knew what he was doing.
He knew. Wise man.
But by him joining the Morovia group, he was able to convince them to come to Ethiopia together with the Casablanca group and form the organization of.
There you go. Strategically.
So this is when we talk about wise mind, right?
The wise mind of His Imperial Majesty
Rastafari.
Yes.
So right there, because of His Majesty, it's just because of His Majesty. I think the more we think about how His Majesty do it too, remind each other of how His Majesty do, and the things His Majesty focus on too, it'll help, steady,
Yeah. So His Majesty has great influence in Africa, even in Ghana. So this was a personal example. I was walking on Medina New Road one early morning, and with Rasta one of the big Rasta people, you know. And a lady came out of her house on the road. It was around 6 a.m. She said, "Oh, please, excuse me, please. Can I talk to you for a second? Can you come to my house?" So she lived in a gated house right on the road. And we said, "Oh, no, cool, no problem." So we followed her. She took us to her living room, beautiful living room. She was sitting there with her husband. "So please sit down." And we sat down. She said, "Oh, I want to tell you, our son is one of you," which is, their son was a Rasta man. Mm-hmm. And he's a teacher, but he's not pulling his weight. He lives here, he's in his room every day doing this and that, doesn't clean his room, he doesn't do that. And we want to see if you can talk to him to change, because you know what the man said, the woman's husband said, "I met Emperor Haile Selassie when he came to Ghana. I was one of the people that guided him. First, he gave everybody some amount of money, all the people that guided him. He gave everybody an Ethiopian coin that had a lot of value. Mm-hmm. Then the man said His Majesty was the neatest man."
I've heard that said so many times.
Yes. Yes. The man said, some Ghanaian man out of his own mouth said, "Emperor Haile Selassie is the neatest man that I know, and well-behaved, well-mannered, and well-comported. Our son should be
ashamed." For not repping Rasta right.
That's not what in trouble.
He called himself his follower, so we want you to talk to him. So anyway, I'm telling you that the influence of His Majesty is international, as we said, even in Ghana. People that know him know. Yes.
And me personally, one of my favorite videos that I love to watch over and over and over again is when Kwame Nkrumah visited Emperor Haile Selassie in Ethiopia, and the lion, the pet lions were brought out, and he was petting them and all that. And then I relate that to this whimsical story we used to hear about, when we were kids, about when Kwame Nkrumah went to Ethiopia and him and Haile Selassie were like challenging each other, and Haile Selassie brought his lions out, and then Kwame Nkrumah removed his white handkerchief, and then he shook "Oh, Charlie, hey, but all kind of things are Rasta, But then again, I also want to remember fondly one song that I used to hear a lot when I was growing up, especially when I was going to school in St. Peter's Secondary School. I would go and take a bus from the Asafo Market area, and there's this song that I would hear all the time being played. I forget who, I think his name is Adomaku Nyamicha or something like that. But he had this song where he would be, calling the African leaders from back then. And then I remember vividly when you mentioned Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Gano Mampenyi, Amanfo, something. I don't remember what exactly he says over there. And then Nyamisha or something like that. Emperor Haile Selassie, Ethiopia, Mampenyi, something like that. And all these things point to the high regard we had for His Imperial Majesty in Ghana, even though some people came up with all the whimsical stories about him and Kwame Nkrumah shaking his handkerchief and all that nonsense. But this has been such a serious education, even for me sitting here right now. So I can imagine for everybody else listening to us we have about 8 different platforms where Radio Culture broadcasts to, and also on social media. We are on YouTube right now, and the link is shared on Facebook. So I would say that thank you very much. But before we leave, let's all, put in our last words, and then we will be out of here. Who wants to go first? Empress.
Thank you so much for even giving us the opportunity to say our last words. Not your last words finally, but on this show.
On this, yes.
I'm just very happy to see the Rastafari movement in us. We were serious from back in the day, and we're still serious today, because I started this when I was like 17, and today I just enter my 50s. You know what I mean?
Blessed Lord.
Look at how far we've come, and we're still going. And even as a Rastafari my sister, I didn't come into Rastafari because of a man, because you know how a lot of because my husband or somebody bring I came in Rastafari, touch my own heart, come into Rastafari, and early those days, Rasmiro and Rasdameli, I just want to give thanks, you know, the way you guys helped to shape me. Then I met Rasquefi at Legon, and then the three of us, I have that our picture. Our picture, Rasmiro, Rasquefi, and myself. Those days.
The picture with you wearing that coat, we're wearing some serious coat, be.
Rasmiro wear his serious and tie-dye. Then Rasquefi in your serious and Tama. And look, we're still Rasta, we're still going. So, you know, we face persecution, everything, but we still firm and we are still Rasta going. So, you know, I give thanks for that because it meant that we were serious and the movement is serious and it's here to stay. And I said, Ras 7, you have to send me a picture because we've lost touch. So I haven't seen you many yet. Yes.
All right.
So thank you.
Yeah, good
Thank
to see you. Good
Yes.
to I saw your picture though. Good to hear your vibe, man. Give thanks, a blessing, you know. Yes,
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
yes. Sister Sadia, you know. Yeah. So can I say something?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I just think say His Majesty, you know, sometimes thinking about in this kind of situations, you know, it's like, you know, what do we do? You know, what's happening? You know, and we start to think of like right now, cannabis legalization thing is on in Ghana. We see the problems the whole thing is coming up with, right? Interpretations, misinterpretations, But the thing I think when again back to His Majesty to find a situation in a way that really works, right? Which means we have to think in other ways about it, maybe. You know, because if we leave it, it will be on their terms and it will be like that.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah, so advice you talk about, you know, thinking in new ways, you know, experimenting with ideas, you know, things like that, not being afraid to fail. And advice was talking about his education. I know he was running the education in the country for a good, I mean, for because he is him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, said he was in an interview and he was talking about how some of the projects failed. You know what I mean? And he point out the successful ones. Means that we don't do only the things where we know they go succeed. You know, it's okay to try things out.
Yes.
You know, and then build on that. You know. Yeah. So yeah, that's it.
And correct ourselves and move on. You know.
Exactly.
And I think Kwame Nkrumah also made a point about that. That if we fail, we want to fail by ourselves. We don't want to have someone take the decisions for us. You know. Yes. Deep. Will.
Yes, I give enough thanks, Ras Kwesi, for organizing this reasoning. It's a joy. So man, give thanks for that. Very, very important. And discussing the significance of this day coming tomorrow. But I also want to say, you know, His Imperial Majesty Kedemawe left the portfolio of Minister of Education for himself, in addition to him being the Emperor of Ethiopia.
Very important.
Particular reason that he shaped the minds of the people in a way that he knew he could do it best.
Yes.
And I'm saying this to say that what is education? Education is how we transfer information and knowledge from one generation to the next.
Yes.
So what kind of information, what kind of knowledge are we transferring from this generation to the oncoming generation? We have to be particular about that. Secondly, and this goes to I Rastafari people, you know, let's look at how we can work together more than, you know, focusing on, you know, I'm this and I'm that, I belong to this organization.
The differences, yes.
Because His Majesty himself said something. He says, I am the Emperor of Ethiopia. I am the Emperor of the Christians, the Muslims, the Muslims and the traditionalists. Right? So that simply, to me, means that, well, if you see Rastafari through like a Christian lens, that's your thing. But where can we work together?
Yes.
If I see it through a traditional lens, fine, where can we work together? Because there's a lot of things coming up. If we don't work together, including all this cannabis thing going on right now, we are going to stand to be at a loss. So doctrines and all that kind of stuff, yes, but we are all hailing His Majesty.
Yes, that's it.
Very good point.
Bring us together.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
So,
we give thanks. There's a few messages on our different media, social media platforms. We cannot read any of those. Sorry, the program is over. But let me read this one from Joseph Schreck. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Pardon me if I'm not. Joseph Schreck. He says, greetings and blessed love from Austria and Germany. Everyone have a Ire Rasmus. Give thanks and praises to the Most High. King Selassie the first, Joseph. Blessed love. Bakacha. One love. Yes, we give thanks. And there are other topics that we would definitely be coming back to discuss. Our producers will work on the timing and everything. But one reasoning I want us all to reconvene and think about is this one here. Did continental Africans sell our brothers into slavery? That topic is on my heart. And I think, yes, we will reconvene to talk about that. And hopefully we can get representation from the diasporan Black community so we have a more balanced discussion. But till such times, I just want to say blessed love Empress Sadia, blessed love Wiro I, blessed love Seven Fireside, blessed love Daddy Bosco, who had to drop to go see to some other things, and blessed love Empress Naj, who I think was caught up in the Women's Council meeting and couldn't join us. But I think that those of us who were here did more than enough justice to the topic. And we will be reconvening again on a different subject, like I said. In the meantime, blessed love all Rastaman and Empresses. You know, tomorrow, make it special. 131 years of Emperor Haile Selassie the first, Gedemawe, Kedemawe, Abba Shanti, King Selassie the first, Jah Ras Tafari. Itinually. Give thanks one and all. We will be back every time. Bless. Yes, indeed.
The only human mechanic, the Almighty. The invisible, visible. Without mother, yet father, yet mother. The first.
It's Jah Beloved featuring Anthony
And
B.
I saw in the right hand of him that seated on the throne,
Sure.
a book that was written within the book of life, sealed with the seven seals. And it was written in
King David's greatest song. King David's greatest song. King David's greatest song. He has prevailed to open the seven seals.
And I saw an angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the seven seals and to lose the seals thereof.
I'm not Solomon, I'm not any other one. I'm the one who stand for to defend the African. Some call him king of the Ethiopian, but in reality, he's the king of all nations. King of kings, conquering lion. Righteous judge with him judgment rod in his hand. Beat the pinky and the kettle come German. Make the whole entire nation overstand, say. I Rastafari love the righteous, but the wicked of the land.
And no man in heaven and on earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book thereof, neither to look on the book thereon, but him alone.
King David's greatest song. King David.
Yes, indeed, we give thanks and praises to all of you who were able to do the listening.
Rastafari, when we chant, greater David, greater son. Some man a go and work till greater come. No one can hide from Jah moon and sun. So tell Babylon them free paper bun. Cause we hail the King of Kings and hail the Lord of Lords. Hail Rastafari, but fake and frauds. Them no want to see righteous get no reward. That's why we ever depend we can.
We bow out on the track, on the heels of this track from yours truly, Jah Beloved, featuring Anthony B.
He was groaning.
King David, greater son. And yes, we do give thanks every time. We will be back same time next week, God willing, and we'll bring you another subject on Groundation on Radio Culture.
One man alone rule gravity. So we say, let's see back up. Tell them.
To such times, get him out. Have a blessed Earthstrong, His Majesty Earthstrong. One love every time. King David, greater son.